that some of the inspiration that he drew from for this movie was from 90s Star Trek. And he said that he felt like the idea of three people controlling one mind had been in Star Trek, but he wasn't like 100% sure. That's
interesting.
He said that some people have asked him if he got the idea from Herman's Head. If you remember that show from the early 90s.
No.
You remember that? It's kind of a cheeky show. It was one of those very early 90s shows where a lot of the cutaways in the episodes would be inside of his brain, and it was like another version of him talking to the screen, and then he would act it out. So it's kind of like he was controlling himself and so forth and whatnot. But he said he had never seen the show, so he didn't connect the two.
That must suck when you make something. Because Chris, like when you make a picture and someone's like, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of Frankenstein," or "That reminds me of this," it's
you got that idea from Slugs, right? And you're like, I never saw Slugs.
I mean, there's basically 7 stories that are told, isn't there?
8, I believe. I forget what the exact number was.
So you make a picture. Hey, that's like this. Like, no, man. Like, I don't know.
No, I didn't get. It didn't all come from there, but. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. They said he had probably seen that in a Star Trek episode or something.
I mean, I guess some things that you watch as a kid stay with you. I mean, I guess my viewings of Return of the Jedi made me love monster movies so much. Like, that's the kind of monsters I see in my head from, like, Rancor and all that. So I'm sure something has to stick.
Yeah, and of course that would affect your writing and the different styles. And if you were to make movies, you would then bring that ideology on with you.
I tell you what, though, I do love Ellie's plan to go back to her apartment to get peanut butter and hats. I'm all about
this kind of lady. This lady knows exactly what she's working with.
First and foremost, I love peanut butter, right? Second, I love a good hat. Do you remember my set hat?
I do. It was like a giant sombrero.
Yeah, it was big. It was too big, and it had a hole in the front because I'm 6'4" and I would walk into pop-up tents.
I just have one of those black coverall hats,
and I had a paper clips holding pieces of it together. That was my set hat, man. But yeah, no, I like that plan. Peanut butter and hat.
Yeah, right? You can't go wrong with that.
No.
To go along with the eating, Chris had told me that some of the scenes that were written but not filmed, one of them was Stitch goes into a grocery store and eats everything in sight and grosses out people that are in the grocery store, but it was deemed too expensive, so they couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get a store, you gotta get food.
Yeah, that's a whole other ballgame right there. But another thing that was shot, they actually shot this but wasn't used. Stitch actually gets into a fight with some hooligans, but they decided to cut it out of the movie due to the flow. It didn't work with the film.
Oh man, that must be a bummer to film a fight scene and then cut that thing.
Yeah, there was another thing that he said that they had, but they wound up not using, which was there was supposed to be a child version of Stitch who helps Stitch / Jennifer escape at the climax of the movie, but it was deemed not necessary.
I wonder if Tyler regrets filming that fight scene.
That one? I don't know. How much do you, I guess, yeah. But I mean, if you did have that in the movie, do you think that one take fight scene would have been as memorable?
Yeah, I guess it adds to the effectiveness of it. But I mean, I guess you always have to learn to, cut your babies.
Yeah, of course. That's always the worst part. Like, everybody knows from making a movie that you'll shoot something and then it's like, oh no, I really like that part, but you couldn't use it. And it's like, or it didn't work. And you're like, oh, but it's so beautiful.
Lee Wannell told a really funny story about Upgrade, a movie that I love. I think I've told you this, but he had a fight scene in it and he was talking to his producers. He's like, so yeah, the main character walks into a room and fights 2 guys. And the producer goes, no. He goes, okay, the main character walks into a room and fights 1 guy. No. The main character walks into a room and has a verbal duel with 2 guys. No. He walks into a room and has a verbal duel with 1 guy? No. A man walks into a room? No. A man sees a room? No. A man walks past a room? No. Okay, there is no room. Yes. Like that's the discussion they had about an extra fight scene in Upgrade. But I love the breakdown of how they kind of cut that down. And I mean, at the end, the movie still works. But you're right. I think the effectiveness of that fight scene.
Yes, of course. It would have taken away from the frat house fight scene.
And plus the flow, because if you think about the progression of this film, right, I guess the fight scene could show us that this character, yes, is very strong. However, the character goes about kind of getting revenge on the people that did her wrong. So the married man gets killed. The frat house guys get beat up. So they kind of go back and find the guy who has the collective too. They kind of find him. Doesn't have anything to do. like with the plot. So yeah, I guess that definitely should go.
It would be a revenge movie, and then if you added this, and it's like the scene with the hooligans, it's like, well, who are they getting revenge on now? And it's like, not unless it actually kind of worked. I totally understand why they would cut it out.
Also, that food scene, when she became Stitch, where did she get that Cheese Whiz?
We already had the one eating scene, which was kind of already gross, which was in the diner, remember?
Yeah.
Where she orders a steak, puts marshmallows on it, then dumps fettuccine. So if we did we need another food scene? Nah, not so much. That's probably why that was probably deemed not to be okay, not used.
That was a gross food scene.
Yeah.
That guy is really chill about having a Frankenstein friend.
I thought that was so funny because it's like he's pretty relaxed for a guy who's seeing something pretty disgusting going on. And then the sex scene, which is just so damn funny. She's leaning in for a kiss and he's kind of like, and then, then you smash cut to her aggressively throwing him into the bedroom, and then they're getting it on, and then her arm falls off.
And then earlier on in the picture when she staples her finger back on.
Yeah, did you notice that's how the movie opens up, is with the surgeon, and he's talking to the face, and another character walks in and says, "Hey, who are you talking to?" He's like, no one. I'm just having issues with this arm." And he pulls out a stapler. He's like, staple, staple, staple. And
he just starts slapping
better.
That guy's drinking a Capri Sun, I think, too, in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a lot of eating in the surgery room, especially with the other guy. He has the donut, and then he.
His buddy in the lab, I don't know if you ever watched it, but there's a show I love called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
No, I never seen it.
Oh, got it. Well, it's just a really excellent show. So when I saw that guy, it made me very happy. His buddy who drank the Capri Suns. You know when you watch a show and for the rest of the time when you see him, like, oh, there's The Wire.
It's hard to break that image, dude. I mean, like Robert Downey Jr., how long it took for him to be broken away from Chaplin.
Really? He was Chaplin for a long time?
He was Chaplin for a while. Remember the early 90s? That's all he was known for. And then
he's just walking down the street and people yell Chaplin.
Yo, Chaplin, what's up, man? Where's your mustache?
Hey, back to school. What's going on?
What's going on?
Show me a triple Lindy. That was my dad. All right, so hey, let's do something. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk more Patchwork. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And Chris Kelly, you're sounding great.
Hey, yeah, I'm back.
So you did a lot of legwork for this. Is there anything else cool that you want to tell me about during your interviews? And also, I just want to say, if anybody from the cast or crew of Patchwork is listening, we want to say thank you for answering all these questions and kind of providing us with this feedback to talk about your picture. We really appreciate it.
Yes. I had sent out emails to everybody involved with this production, and I contacted a lot of people. Everybody internally within this film production then forward my information, or forward me their information to then talk about this film. So I'm really happy that everybody was really open and really willing to want to talk about this film. Marley Vihiri, or she goes by Mars, she said she's the production designer, and she said when she read the script, she instantly loved it. She was friends with Tyler from AFI, and she did a lot of shoots with him prior to this. One being the short film Patchwork is based on, called Patchwork, which if you haven't seen the short film, there's a limited release that's happening right now as we're recording this podcast on VHS. It's really enjoyable. It's very short. It's roughly 3 minutes long. It's that scene in Patchwork where Jennifer wakes up and she's saying, like, I mean, all the three voices are going off at the same time. She's hungover, like, oh, my skin's crawling, my hair feels weird, etc. And then she screams. And actually the scream that's in the short film is the same scream that's used in the feature film.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they compiled all that together. That was actually used as a makeup test, so that to try to get funding for another film. But according to Chris Lee, that idea was then Tyler and Chris were both pitching ideas back and forth. And that's how they came up with a feature version of this. It's kind of funny because Chris Lee told me that he was actually sleeping on Tyler's couch at the time. So I just imagine him like sitting there, like he has a sleeping bag pulled up over him, like, hey, how about we just make a feature out of this?
I mean, that's what you got to do nowadays. Make the short to get the funding.
Of course. Yeah. And I mean, people have been doing that since filmmaking in general. Sam Raimi did the same thing with Evil Dead.
Yeah, they raised
12 minutes short.
They had their Super 8 films, and then they raised the money from a bunch of dentists. And then they went to the woods of North Carolina and had a miserable experience. Have you read his books, If Chins Could Kill?
Oh no, I've always wanted to. Though. I think you were the one who told me to get it on Audible. I never got around to it.
I love Bruce Campbell, man, and he might direct Doctor Strange too. Sam Raimi.
Really? That'll be a good movie.
I might come out of retirement to drink some coffee on film sets if that happens.
I didn't work on the Doctor Strange.
Well, that was filmed that was overseas.
That was in London, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why not, Chris Kelly?
I could fly over there. Why not? I've had crazier offers for filmmaking.
And I gotta say, for $100,000 though, the production design in this movie, because all right, so first and foremost, you got to think that a lot of the production design, you had some solid actors, 12-day shoots, but you had a lot of kind of gore in here. You had a lot of those kind of gags. But the production design, I mean, she hits above her weight in this one.
She really did. Mars told me that the original Frankenstein was the inspiration for the laboratory and that they wanted to go for cringe value. So she tried to make it as dirty as possible. Then
it's grimy.
Yeah, it's definitely, you feel the dirt. She said that then they wanted to update it for modern audiences. And most of the locations that were used were left as is, or minimal as possible was added to them.
I mean, that's a big part that I tell a lot of my students with production design and looking for locations. You kind of got to find a spot that kind of tells a story already if you don't have a budget to dress it.
Exactly. That's I mean, a lot of up and coming filmmakers, that's what, one of the things they always come into road bumps with is that they want to make, Mad Max with ninjas. And it's like, well, try to do something that, already has a story that's already there and then make your story around that.
If I was a producer, I'd be like, how about Mad Max with no ninjas and no Mad Max and no cars? Because if we get streets, we got to close the streets. That means we need permits. And then we need police officers and blockades. Like, screw that.
Think of something that you can shoot in a church parking lot.
Yeah. And the only God Forgives, we just talked about it recently on the podcast. I listened to the commentary, and they didn't have much of a budget for that. They actually had to go do a screening of Drive to raise money to finish the film. But Nicholas Winding Refn, he tasked his crew with finding clubs in Bangkok that were already dressed. They didn't have money to dress sets. So they just found places that were dressed already and let that production design speak for itself. But I do think, I mean, they picked the right locations. I liked the dorm room. I liked the apartment in the beginning. You don't spend much time there, but I liked the lab. I liked, obviously you have to have scarcely decorated apartments, but a lot of these kids are new, and like she had just moved into a place, so that's not going to be fully dressed, right? If you just move into it, you don't have to dress it that much. If you are that one guy he just was looking for a residency. Like your house isn't going to be decorated that much because he's kind of moved there to find an area. So yeah. I think they really chose wisely with production design. Yeah,
I think Mars did a phenomenal job.
That's something I appreciate that art a lot, and I think there's beautiful production design in the massive film. So, Black Panther, Hannah Beecher Stowe, she was prepping for that for a year, but they also had $200 million budget to kind of prep everything they need. So, I mean, the Oscar was well deserved, and I think it's worth teaching, but I love teaching smaller areas of production designs, like just watching the nuances that you can add on a budget. That's the best teaching moments for me.
Yes, being able to work with your surroundings, that's probably the best teaching method you can do.
And this movie had no annoying extras. I was watching a movie the other day, and I got really grumpy.
Idle Hands?
No,
remember the extras in that? The director wrote a poem about the extra.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Because they had to edit around her because she just kept getting to the front of the line, and it's like,
I noticed some extra walking the other day. I'm like, no one walks like that. No.
Yeah, people don't get it. When you're watching a movie and you go on a film set, and then you're like, hey, we just need you to be walking a dog, and then all of a sudden they freeze up and then start walking in a weird way, and you're like, this is not a Monty Python skit.
Is that guy doing the robot?
Yeah.
What? Yeah, it just boggles the mind. But no, I mean, that's, I guess, really great to the ADs and everyone on set that there were no extras that annoyed me in this picture.
Yeah, everybody flowed really together well. Everything looked believable.
I think that'd be fun to decorate that lab that guy was in, the scientist. I mean, he doesn't have a name, so I got to call him that guy.
The different chemicals and whatnot to put into it.
Yeah, the beakers. That's my goal in life, is to set up a beaker production design set and just have some boiling pink liquid.
Gotta have green.
I made fake drinks before. For AMC, they show the thing beforehand where for some reason everyone has glasses in the AMC ads with bars, and they're holding a glass cup of Coke.